Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builders Supply. In this video is to bring you a closer look at the Marks USA, their part number 195. This is an AB and a 26D G3. This is their Survivor Series Grade 1 cylindrical lock. And the purpose of this video is to do a visual review of the items in the box, the contents of the box. We'll go over the installation instructions, the template, etc. We'll talk about the Marks lock itself. So coming out of the box, we have installation instructions. Oh yeah, the template. There's a template here. I had put that template into the scanner so as to get it attached to the extended description. We're going to go over all the paperwork, in fact. So, of course, the business end of this lock. And this client ordered this lock less cylinder, so there's no cylinder installed in this lock. Okay, specifically less cylinder. Grade 1, which means it has passed 1 million cycles. Lever action seems to be pretty good. Comes back. Interior as well. Obviously a cylindrical lock. Meaning that you have, a round hole drilled through the door, with then a hole drilled in the edge of the door for the latch bolt, and a cross bore hole. This is a lever lock, and it is a cylindrical lever lock, so therefore it's going to have the through bolt holes, as you can see here and here at the 12 and 6 o'clock position. That's because you can really generate a lot of torque, rotational torque, on the lock itself. And if you, without those through bolt holes, that seems like a nice latch bolt. Without those through bolt holes, you'd be able to really get a lot of, movement and bending. The latch bolt wants to stay straight, but that body wants to move. So those lever through bolt holes keep that operating healthily. 2 3/4 latch bolt. Lots of information stamped on the front of that. Well, there's the UL in the upper left-hand corner. Is it UL? Oh, it is, because it's on its side. Upper right-hand corner is the F, the letter F. That stands for compliance with positive pressure. This has been tested, obviously, in a fire door application, and is compliant with positive pressure. And I know that it's positive pressure because it's the capital letter F. If it was a lowercase f, it would be neutral pressure. 3H, I can only imagine that means 3 hour. And the Marks logo is there as well. All of that is really important to know because the annual inspections of fire doors and egress doors in certain occupancies are now mandated in code. That comes from the NFPA standard, the NFPA 80 and NFPA 101. NFPA 80, the fire standard. If that's adopted, if that standard is adopted by your local building code, it becomes code. So in certain occupancies, you have to have annual. You're obligated. The building owner is obligated to have their fire doors inspected annually. This information on the face of the latch bolt is where manufacturer puts the visual evidence to anyone looking at the lock that says this lock is compliant with the requirements of, this door needing to be fire rated or to a certain degree. Whatever degree that is, it is, but it's compliant. A 3H, I've never seen 3H, but I'm just going to guess it means 3 hour again. That's a 2 3/4 latch bolt. Nowhere on here does it measure 2 3/4, but we'll go over that when we get to the template. That is a 2 1/4 inch tall and 1 1/8 wide faceplate. This is what's called a deadlocking latch because when the deadlocking tab is depressed and held in, not when it's in a bad mood, but when it is held retracted, the latch bolt cannot be lloyded easily, but also that's there to help ensure the hardware actually can pass the fire test. It's going to be, obligated, that the installation is going to look like that. That keeps that latch from falling back where it does not belong. So keeping the lock actually mechanically engaged into the strike is the other purpose of that deadlocking latch. Okay. Now let's continue on with a tour of this lock. Now as we continue through the lock, let's take another look at the strike plate that is here. What's included here is what would be called an ANSI, A-N-S-I, ANSI strike. That means that it's going to fit into a hollow metal frame. Hollow metal frames with an ANSI strike prep are going to fit this, will receive this strike plate without any trouble. You can also, and you will also see these installed, and that's 4 7/8 by the way. You'll also see those installed in wood frames. It's not unusual to do a commercial project with wood frames, and having an ANSI strike is typical. You can do other strikes as well, but this is really going to be what you'd see in a hollow metal frame. The overall width of that strike, about 1 7/8 inches. However, strikes like this are measured from the center. Strikes with lips are measured from the center line of the hole to the edge of the lip, and that's about 1 1/4 inches. Okay, and that's standard. That lip length is completely standard. 1 3/16, 1 5/16, 1 1/4. It's going to be pretty typical. It's very possible that you would have a need for a different length on the lip of the strike, so be mindful to take that into consideration. Determining strike lip length is a different topic, different conversation, but be mindful that you're going to get a strike and it'll be 1 1/4 inches. You might need something else, so be mindful of that. Typical 4 7/8 strike, it's going to be 1 1/4 inches up here at the top. That's just coincidental. Okay, we've got our latch bolt, nice quality latch bolt. It seems like it's a nice quality latch bolt. Now, what else? And we're just going through the parts that are in the packaging. You're going to have your interior rosette. That appears to be stainless steel. Okay. A package of fasteners and a couple of tail pieces. Those might be included with the thought that you're going to stick some other cylinder into this. Let's back up. You need to insert a cylinder into this lock. It doesn't include one. They've included a couple of tail pieces that I believe are going to be defined in the installation instructions. So you might be sticking into this your keying system of whatever your building keying system is, but you're going to be using a Marks lock in some other manufacturers, with some other manufacturers' cylinder. And there's a tremendous amount of cross-pollination these days. Many years ago, you certainly did not see every major lock manufacturer make cylinder platforms to fit in other people's locks. And I think that that's a good thing, because it allows us to divide the lock and the cylinder technology apart from each other. What that means is, let's say that your building has no one is related to Marks in the sense of other companies that I would mention, but let's say you had a Sargent. I'm working on a project for a client now, a Sargent Kiso system. It's a dimple key system. It's a high security keying system, and you've got Kiso installed everywhere. Well, someone says, okay, but why are the locks so expensive? I'm just making this up. Well, because this, and this. Is there any way to reduce the cost? One possible way to do that is to keep your Kiso keying system in place and then use another lock that will take the cylinder that you want to insert into it. I don't know if Kiso will fit into a Marks. I imagine that it will. I'd have to research that. Whatever your keying system is, Corbin, Yale, Schlage, Medico. Medico owns 75% of the domestic high-security cylinder market. Very likely you're doing Medico, but you don't, you want to reduce the cost of the lock. So that's why those tail pieces certainly are in there. The rest of this is, I have a feeling that we're going to have 2 screws left over. We'll see when we get to the installation instructions. There are 8 screws in here. I know that we'll need 6, 2 for the lock body, 2 for the latch, 2 for the strike. That's 6. What the other 2 are for is the possibility that they would have included screws for a T-strike, not an ANSI ASA strike. So we'll discover what all of those screws are for as we next look at the lock a bit closer and see exactly what it is all about. Okay, so this lock is again, a grade 1 cylindrical lock. This is their 195, their Survivor series. That's just the marketing term for it. It's an A-B function, and that's going to, we're going to look up what that function means, but it's certainly an entrance function, and we'll go over what that means. This is in 26D, satin chrome is what that is. They're probably zinc die-cast levers would be my guess on what this would be. What that means is the levers will be non-ferrous, they'll be dense, they'll be heavy because they're dense, and they'll take a nice finish, you know, a reasonably nice finish. I don't know that they're made of zinc, but I'm guessing I'm sure that they're not brass. This will be non-ferrous, obviously not solid brass, and not stainless steel would be my guess as well. And they're clearly not steel. What I don't know off the top of my head is what the G3 stands for. G3. Let's take a look and see if we can determine what that means. I actually needed to call the factory. G3 is the code for less cylinder, is what that is. Okay, G3, less cylinder. So the installation instructions are going to talk about how to get this onto your door, obviously. Let's just start this video with just being naturally curious and not looking at the installation instructions first, which is always a good thing, but when all else fails, look at the installation instructions. So our tool, you know, lever removal tool, cylinder removal tool, that's going to go into the base of the trim, and I'll be able to remove that lever as a result. So what we're doing there is we're depressing that spring-loaded tab at the tip of my finger through this access hole, and as I push that down, it's spring-loaded, I will be able to pull the lever off. At this point, all of this, the inside rose mounting assembly will come off. Now, inside of this is going to be the spring cage. I don't see anything that tells me that this piece is handed at all. It appears to be able to go on in either orientation. You know, just being naturally curious about the item. It appears to be non-handed. What's going to be in this inside assembly, of course, will be the spring pack that is going to allow the lever trim to actually operate. So the springs are inside of here. I don't know that they are replaceable at all. The fact that there are 2 screws here tell me that they may be able to, and in certain other locks you can most definitely replace those. One thing to be mindful of is that this will rotate in either direction, up or down, which tells me that it's very possible that it's going to retract the latch bolt also, either up or down. which it will, just putting it back together, it will retract the latch in either rotational direction. Not saying that that's a problem, just identifying it. So what's nice is that's all one piece. And at this point, as I had said earlier, I think we're going to have 2 screws left over. And I personally appreciate a lock that is simple to put together, meaning you need to read the installation instructions always. It's just, I appreciate being able to look at something and say, okay, I can see how this goes together. And when it's the first time with a lock, I would set a rule for myself that I would actually thoroughly review the installation instructions, because while almost all locks, cylindrical grade 1, grade 2 levers, are the same and the principle is the same, there are some differences between them that are nice to be aware of. And in particular, it comes to when assembling the exterior half of the lever with your cylinder. Okay, we'll pull that outside lever off. Oh, also, where they will certainly diverge is how to adjust for door thickness. So that exterior lever, it comes off by the same principle, just pushing our pin tool down through the access hole, and then getting that tool on top of our spring-loaded tab, depressing it, and that will allow the lever to come off. But only when it'll work all the time when the cylinder is not present, or I should say the tailpiece is not present. And when the cylinder is installed, you need to actually rotate that key in order to make room to press the tab. So the tab, when you push it in, it'll move. Let's do this. Okay. When the tailpiece is there, it can't move. When you insert the key and turn the key, now it's got enough room to move, allowing you to pull the trim off. So we have basically, removed our interior lever rose assembly, our interior lever, obviously, our exterior lever. At this point, I can see that that's threaded, and adjusting for door thickness is certainly going to be discussed in the installation instructions. So we have this disassembled to the point where we can certainly switch to the screen view and take a look at the installation instructions, and then go over that. Let's pick up with that now. Okay, so here's the item that we're looking at, and then we're going to come over here to the installation instructions. Actually, let's look at all the supporting documentation before we get to the installation instructions. That's going to be the product brochure first, which will be here and down below. So the 195 is going to be a reference, of course, to the lever design. They're calling it the 195 American lever, or maybe the 1 lever, I suppose. Grade 1 95 series American lever. I'm not sure how they dissect that, but so that's what we're dealing with. So at the beginning of the document, they're just showing 4 different levers and 4 different finishes, an exploded view of this very simple lock set. There's no doubt that plastic bushing that is here, that is embedded in the interior rose assembly. So there's no need to, it's there. I don't see why you would attempt to pull it out at all. So the inside lever, the cylinder retainer, that's in the lever. You don't need to take that out on the inside at all. You would on the exterior when you are inserting your cylinder. Again, the rose cover is included, the plastic bushing, and the interior rose assembly that's spring-loaded. Those 2 bolts, those 2 longer bolts in the bolt package, they're going to go through the door preparation into the tapped holes of the posts in the exterior rose assembly. You have your chassis, what they call the lock body assembly. That's the business end, obviously, of all of this. Your latch, your retractor hub that's inside of here, and that's what connects the connects the latch bolt to the chassis assembly. Okay, there is a split spacer ring, and it's a black ring that is down inside of the lock, and you can see that when you rotate the exterior rose assembly. Again, I don't see any reason to play with that or to manipulate it at all at this point, although we may need to when we go to adjust our thickness. Exterior rose assembly, again, springs will be buried inside of here. Cylinder retainer, a cylinder when you provide one, and then the exterior lever, that's here. Okay. Meets Buy America Act, it's BAA compliant. Doesn't mean it's made on domestic soil, but it's compliant with that requirement. It certainly means that parts of this or all of this are made in a country that, like Taiwan, I believe, would allow compliance with this. If you're here in Florida, this is a part of every door you do. High velocity hurricane approved. Doors, frames, hardware, all of it has to be compliant. The dimensional properties of the 4 levers that are available: American, Crescent, Monaco, and Titan. Of course, the American lever with that return back to within a half of an inch of the face of the door is incredibly common. This is an ANSI A156.2. The A156 is the series of documents that pertain to hardware. The .2 is the actual publication from that series, indicating that this is indeed a grade 1 UL listed 3-hour fire rated unit. 2 3/4 and 2 3/8 are available. The latch, I didn't show that to you earlier. I'll try to remember, but the latch plate itself moves. It floats. The front of that latch floats. It's a floating latch face to accommodate square edge or beveled edge doors, or why that's like that. I was right. The levers are made of, well, they're made of Zamac, so that is a material that's die cast. I think elsewhere it may say zinc die cast. With a 1/2 inch return, except the Monaco and the Titan, they don't feature that return. Roses are through bolted, 3 7/16 diameter. Spring loaded 2 number 10 through bolts. Probably a 1032 would be my guess. That strike is an 1135 4 7/8 ASA curved lip strike. They don't indicate other strikes are available, but that would only explain why there's other screws. It must be a generic screw package. Door thickness is going to go from 1 5/8 to 1 7/8, so a relatively narrow range of door thickness. This K1904 spacer, and it's probably going to be used in multiples of 2, will be probably a piece of black plastic or something like that that will literally sit underneath each rose assembly and just spacing the door out evenly. The reason that you need to have a range of thickness is because 1 3/4 doors, when you put a caliper on them, they're not 1.75. They're, you know, a little bit thinner. A fire door is going to be 1.71. A door with plastic laminate, yeah, that's going to be definitely thicker than 1 3/4. So that range is there to account for that. Cylinder, if it came with one, would be the typical Marks C keyway. I'm sure that's just an SC4 or a Schlage C 6-pin, like a 35101 would be the Schlage original blank for that. Stainless steel retractor, that again is the item here that pulls the latch when you operate the lock. The 395 series cannot be supplied with an interchangeable core. That's probably just a limitation of the design of this lever. There's just not enough room back here like there is on the other levers to get that installed. Now the functions. We had talked earlier about the functions. Oh yeah, G3, it's right there. I looked too. Less cylinder. Less cylinder. Okay, so we have an AB function, and that's entrance. That's also an F109. F109 literally means that if you were to look in the catalog of any lock manufacturer, they will always have the ANSI number, where an ANSI number applies. It will apply with an F109. That means it's an entrance function. That's really a triple function lock, meaning it has a push and turn button. And let's switch back to the camera view and take a look at that. Now, before we look at that push-turn button, that floating front, that's to accommodate, that's by design, that's to accommodate square edge or beveled edge doors. Okay? Square edge or beveled edge doors. Now the triple function latch. So right now we've got a button. Right now, each side, when the button is popped out, each side is unlocked. Okay, I can rotate my levers on either side, and it's going to work. That's the inside lever. I was thinking it would go in far enough, but it doesn't. Okay, the inside's unlocked. The outside is unlocked. That's just a passage function is all that is. If I were to push the button in, just push it in, the outside is now, well, the outside is locked, although it has a clutch happening, but it's not retracting the latch bolt. That's locked. As soon as push the button in, outside is now locked. As soon as I do one of two things, I either push the door closed. Well, actually, I don't know if that's going to work. Let's test. No, it does not, unfortunately. That's unfortunate. There are some locks that if you were to push the door closed and depress the latch, it will pop the button out. It doesn't on this lock. I wish that it did. What that solves is someone pushing the button, leaving and pulling the door closed behind them. That's locking the unit. I would want that to be unlocked because you'll have people unintentionally lock the door. So the only way to... So outside is locked when I just push the button. When I rotate the inside trim, it pops the lever out, making the unit unlocked. So that's what's called an office function. The third function is a push and turn on the turn button. Outside is always locked. Inside is always free. Outside always stays locked. So that's your triple function. And you know, in the history of lock functions, the entrance function hasn't always existed. You can go back and look in a early 1970s Schlage catalog, and you will not find an entrance function. You'll have other functions that did similar things, but not a single lock that did all three. And the entrance function is incredibly common. You can leave it unlocked. You can leave it always locked. If you wanted to have it one-time use, just push the button only. You know, where you have... It's an office function in the sense that you're in your office and someone comes in and the button is pushed for privacy. As soon as they leave, that door is unlocked. Okay? And that's the purpose of the push button only. So let's switch back to the screen view and continue on looking at the product brochure. Okay, so we've talked about at length what the entrance function is, and what's nice is you can see in this grade 1 cylindrical lock a tremendous offering of functions, at least 2 dozen. And that's the letter and the part number. Okay. The IC core cylinder is the part number that you need to use when you want an interchangeable core lock. So if you're ordering this 195 AB lock, but it's for removable or interchangeable core, you need to order it as 195 RAB as listed here. Okay. And obviously at that point, you will need to define further what what core you're going to put into it. So let's get to the options, and that's exactly where thicker doors, you can define that with a code. Other back sets or other latch bolt. Okay. Now this 3/4 throw, the standard throw on this latch bolt is 1/2 inch. At least it should be 1/2 inch. No, it's 9/16. Of course, they indicate that right here. The projection of the latch is 9/16. You may have a fire-rated door that says on the label 3/4 inch min latch throw. 3/4 inch minimum latch throw, and that you'll see that in pairs of hollow metal doors. So you need to order that E8 code. Solid latch for electric strike. You might need to be installing this with an electric strike, and at that point you're probably going to ditch the deadlocking tab. 3 3/4 latches are available. Less cylinder, that's our G3. And if you wanted it with a 2 3/4 T-strike, S3, and that indeed is why those extra 2 screws are in the packaging. Now here are your cylinders. You're going to want to indicate what core you're using. So if you indicate that RAB, you're going to want to indicate what IC core that you are using. And obviously they need to know that in order to prep not only the lever but the rest of the assembly accordingly. Okay, and that American lever, because it's such a generic design, can take all of these different cores, and plus it's going to be the most common model. Now they do list that they can do in the Crescent as well a Medico interchangeable core. Okay, electrified functions are available. You're going to order an EU or an EL, electric unlock or electric latch. And these are the milliamps that each are going to take. Standard and high security IC core models, interchangeable core models for 6 or 7 pin cores not included. They can take high security cylinders by these other folks. Apparently Marks has a high security cylinder. I'm not familiar with it, but apparently they do. Medico, obviously. Keymark is Medico's small format cylinder. Falcon, I'm not sure what Falcon's high security cylinder is. Schlage, which would be probably Primus. Small format, Schlage small format, and then Best. Best, that would obviously also mean Arrow clones of Best small format. IC core tailpieces are included, so that's good to know that you don't have to go out and buy that, or you forgive me. You get the lock, you've got your own core, but you're missing the tuning fork, the tailpiece. So this 75 series are grade 2. We're just going to scroll through and past all of that. So that allows us to go through the product brochure. Before we skip over to the installation instructions and the template, let's go here, link to the manufacturer's page. This is the item that we're working on. That will allow you to see not only all of the Marks products we sell, but a link to their website. When you go ahead and click on that, it's going to get us to this page where we can get under the cylindrical locks eventually. Let's take a look. Products, cylindrical. Okay. And, it's a overview. High quality, longer lasting, lower maintenance design, competitively priced. Grade 1, which means it's 1 million cycles. It's passed a million cycle test. They say that this has gone 3.6 million cycles. I'm not shocked by that at all. These grade 1 locks don't stop working at the first cycle past 1 million. Unique stainless steel clutch and bronze bearings dramatically reduce wear and abuse and eliminates lever droop. Okay. Bronze is a self-lubricating material, but it does have a clutch. Lifetime mechanical warranty. 3-hour fire rated and available in finishes. The Marks Survivor lever set has a unique clutch mechanism that radically reduces the wear and abuse that typical cylindrical lever sets endure. When locked, the levers of the Survivor disengage from the retractor and other interior mechanisms of the lock. The levers of the Survivor swing freely without resistance. This reduces the amount of wear on lock components and eliminates lever droop. The use of a clutch results in longer lasting, lower maintenance, eloquent solution. Absolutely, we sure can't argue that. Now let's move ourselves to the installation instructions, but the first thing they point out is going to be a reference to door preparation. So in the spirit of door preparation, let's first move to looking at the template that is included with the paperwork. And this is literally a scan of the document that is included with the lock hardware. So this is a 2 3/4 template, and the fact that the lock is includes a 2 3/4 latch, that would be That's nice that they have that pulled. Back in the old days with Schlage A-line locks, you had to, if you were going to swap the latch bolt out, you needed to swap out the template as well, because the templates were 2 3/8 or 2 3/4. Now you'll notice this is the edge of the door, that 1-inch hole. Detach dotted line. Well, I wouldn't detach it. I would fold across the dotted line. Fold it there. This is going to be the edge, from the edge of the door to the center of the hole. That's where you're going to, and obviously this is not to scale, where, that actual template is, probably that big, okay? I just have it looking larger for us. So when you fold that over, you're going to mark the center of the door and drill your 1-inch hole. But first, you're going to go from the edge of the door 2 3/4 back. Now you'll see that there are 2 dots here. Well, they do a good job with this, and what I mean by that is, if your door is square-edged or beveled, makes a big difference. So where you're going to mount, where you're going to prep the backside of your door is going to have everything to do with whether or not that door is square or beveled, because backside is measured from the center of the thickness of the door. Well, from here over or here over on a square-edged door, it doesn't matter. Well, it does matter if you're dealing with a beveled edge door, because 2 3/4 measured on either side is a different dimension. So what they're doing to compensate for that is saying, if you have a beveled edge door, from the high side of the door, which would be the pull side, you're going to use this hole further away, because of course naturally you're referencing from over here further away than you are here. So be mindful which of those 2 holes that you go to. If it's a beveled edge door, use the outside hole, applying the template to the pull side of the door. If it's a square edge door, you do it from either side of the door and you're in good shape. What's nice about this template is they also give you the location for those holes for the through bolts. So if you're dealing with a wood door, I would just use a center punch, or I would use a spring-loaded center punch, a spring punch, and I would place my template, tap, 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 and I'm done. My holes are now marked. I'm good to go. The issue, however, is that this template would be better if they had a third line, because now I want to take this template and go to the other side of the door and mark my same holes, because I don't want to drill through the door. I don't think anyone ever would drill through the door. So that would be a better way to do that, and I would recommend that they modify this template, maybe clean it up a little bit, I suppose, somehow. But at the end of the day, you still need you just need to read, read the information. So now we've talked about the template that's included with the hardware. This discussion won't go into how to prep the door, whether it be a steel door or a wood door. If you need extended discussion on how to do that, call us up and I will, or someone here will walk you through that process. Now let's move on to the installation instructions. Okay, so we've gone over the template. Now let's move to the installation instructions. This sort of lock, and there are some grade 2 cylindrical locks where the through bolt holes are optional, but you really never want to. You don't want to install it without through bolt holes ever. Some people have gone out of their way to literally cut those posts off. On those models where you can still install it, the trouble is with this grade 1 by Marks, you would not be able to get the lock installed without those through bolt holes. So that's, a good perspective from looking at it from an engineering set of glasses, so to speak, because it does 2 jobs. You have to have the screws to attach the lock to the door, and having those through bolts are part of the way it was tested. I believe there was some conflict, though, 5/16 holes, and I'm quite sure that template said 3/8. Okay, I'm going to go with 5/16. I believe that 5/16 is accurate for those holes. Okay, door thickness adjustment. Now that's done with the template and the lock, and this is where you do need to get that set before you install it, because it'll, this is going to come from the factory already assembled for an 1 3/4 thick door. Don't change anything, and it's for an 1 3/4 thick door. And what we'll do is we'll switch, and that is what that reference to that split spacer was earlier. So let's switch back to the camera view so we can take a look at the adjustment part of this and how to use it with this template. So in those installation instructions, when you look at figure 5, they're going to hold that lock up there, and really all they're saying is the center line, well, they're showing it to the retractor, but the center line needs to be, you know, along that outside mounting plate. And yeah, I mean, it's to the center line. There's just all there is to it. Okay. Now, that's because we're accomplishing that by threading the chassis. Okay. That's in here. So we would be able to thread that to adjust our thickness of our material. And I've removed the outside lever so we can take a look and see how we just simply thread that. And that's that split spacer that's in there. Okay. And you'll just simply, you know, you're going to rotate that. It doesn't move very far, but it does say for 1 3/8 doors. For doors 1 3/4 or for thinner than 1 3/4, you need to get in there and pull that split spacer out, and it is split right there. So you need to get in there with a tool, maybe a needle nose plier, and pinch that and grab it and pull it out and then thread your unit back in. Is what you'll end up needing to do on that to get that to work. Now, if it's an 1 3/8 door, you'll adjust it for 1 5/8 door thickness. Then you'll have to order those optional spacers, depending on the 1904 is what you'll use. The spacer for the 195 series. Then reinstall the outside lever. So for an 1 3/4 door, you generally don't have to do anything to the lock. It's already set for that. If you need to make adjustments, that's where reading the installation instructions generally is a good idea, because that's where two areas where I find, well, 3 areas. Locks, cylindrical locks, lever locks differ in how they bolt together, how you adjust the door thickness, and how the lever is put back on to the stem. How this actually goes back together with the cylinder, that will change, I have noticed. Okay, so now we are looking at, on the installation instructions, let's switch back to the screen view so we can continue on. Okay, as we are phasing back to the installation instructions, we've talked about step 5, step 6. Step 7 is if you're going to remove the outside lever, you would indeed do that. Turn the key 45 degrees in either direction. I generally rotate it clockwise. To press the outside lever catch with wire pin through the small hole in Rose lever and pull the lever off. We've demonstrated that. If you needed to remove the interchangeable core lever, you could. I don't know why you would need to necessarily, with the exception of I don't know why you would. You might just leave that there. It may impact adjusting door thickness. I can adjust the door thickness, in either event. Well, actually, let's confirm that. I did remove the lever to adjust the door thickness. Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's why. You'll need to remove the exterior lever to adjust the door thickness. Okay, that is confirmed. So that's why they're indicating that there. Okay, for our AB, reinstalling outside lever. And this is one of the 3 ways I mentioned earlier how a lock could change, how locks could be different from each other. If lock is not in the door, mounting posts must be on the vertical line. Align lever catch to face of front lock. That's the little tab. It's called lever catch. Turn key in cylinder 45 degrees either direction. Slide lever on tube until it stops at the lever catch. Slightly wiggle and push until the lever engages lever catch and connector. So what they're saying is, with the lever in your hand, the cylinder is in the lever, turn that key 45 degree. I would say clockwise. Push the entire unit down onto the stem until it makes contact with the lever catch. And when they say wiggle, exactly that. Give it a little bit of wiggle, because what you're looking to do is to make the tailpiece seat into the receiver area here in order for it to find where it needs to go, and then it will indeed pop in, proverbially pop in. When you turn it 45 degree, again, in either direction, you're making it fit in this area, right in here. If you try to go in with it just straight, the tailpiece is going to hit this area and will not enter the receiving area. So turning it on a 45 degree angle is the ticket, so to speak. That's the ticket. And we will skip to installing the lock because the other items talk about other functions. Prepare the lock. Remove the inside lever. Depress the lever catch with a wire pin, the wire tool that's included, through the small hole in the lever or rose, and pull off the tube, the lever. Pull off of the tube, meaning the meaning the chassis stem. This is the tube. Okay. And then the same, you'll pull off the inside rose assembly by doing that again. But at this point, when you study the lever catch, it'll be obvious how you have to manipulate the inside rose assembly to get that to work or to come off. And indeed, it will, of course, need to come off. Okay, install the lock. Push the lock through the 2 1/8 inch hole so that the retractor engages latch tail. So I don't believe they've said, the latch bolt has to be installed first. Absolutely install the latch. Make sure that it fits cleanly into the preparation. Pre-drill your holes should you need to. If it's a wood door, you will. And when you slide the chassis onto the latch, you need to make it look just like this. The curved prongs need to sit underneath this area here. Okay, and then that T-profile needs to sit inside of the retractor hub mouth, just like this. At that point, you should be able to, well, I mean, you could put the lock into the unlocked condition and then rotate the exterior lever to see that the latch is going to retract fully. Push the lock through, prongs must engage. Align outside rows so rose posts enter through bolt holes in the door, sure. Check from inside of door to see that the latch is properly engaged, meaning you're not going to be able to see this view from the outside. You'll only see this from the inside hole, from the hole where the interior lever will be. Install inside trim, place the inside rose assembly, and fasten to the outside rose using those 2 long through bolts. Press rose cover onto the rose. That separate rosette now needs to go onto the inside rose mounting assembly. Your decorative rose is what I'm now talking about. That needs to go on. Then at that point, you're just simply going to push your lever on. But first, be sure the step plastic washer is between inside rose cover and inside rose before assembling. 170 series only. Okay, so sure. The inside lever is going to have the cylinder retainer in it. Install lever. Press lever on lock tube, slightly wiggle and push until the lever engages on catch and connector prongs. Test the lever to make sure it's on. That's all you need to do. Pull on it, tug on it, make sure it's completely seated. Change, replace conventional cylinder. Let's take a look at that. I won't be able to demonstrate that because I don't have a cylinder with this lock, but let's at least review it. Okay, as we move through the change, replace conventional lever, this is really going to talk about how to remove the lever it'll initially start with how to remove the lever and its cylinder from the lock. Remove the key from cylinder and pull plastic cylinder retainer from lever, so you've already have it removed. You're going to do that again by inserting the key 45 degrees with the wire pin, and then you'll be able to pull that off. But you have to hold the key turned at 45 degrees while you depress the wire pin. And if you have trouble with that wire pin, and you may have noticed earlier, it is a bit of a trick to get it to seat on top of the lever catch, they called it, which is here. You'll feel it. If you push the pin in at an extreme angle, you're just simply going to not make contact with the top of the lever catch. So you want to insert it straight. You need to make contact with that lever catch. So here are tail pieces based on what exactly it is that you're working with. The trouble is these tail pieces, oh, they might be. It didn't look like they were stamped. Let's see if they are. We're obviously going to have in this package the F1903-C. That's certainly in here. You know, and I would say that you don't need to have tail pieces in here at all. Yeah, the F1903-C is in here. It's not stamped, but what's in here is exactly this. Then the other one that is stamped says L9 on it, so it's a 1903-L, which will be for all of these bad boys, for these functions. So, you know, you'll be able to do high security right out of the box. Abloy, ASA, that's all high security. Lori, the 1539, that would be a Kaba Ilko generic sort of composite type of construction. And that's that you would need to use their tailpiece to make those cylinders work. I would definitely be investigating, if you're ordering this less cylinder, I would be really mindful of what cylinder you're going to insert into it, because these tailpieces are substantially wider than the average tailpiece. Okay, so you're going to want to make sure that whatever cylinder, if you need to put a cylinder into this lock other than the Marks standard cylinder that you would otherwise get for this, except this client ordered the G3 model, you're going to want to be sure that you can get your hands on tail pieces for the cylinder that you're installing in here. You know, Yale, that's a standard Yale cylinder. No problem with the Kaba Ilko cylinders. Sargent shouldn't be a problem. These are very high security. Schlage Primus, that's not going to be a problem. Corbin Russ wouldn't be. But again, be mindful that you can get your hand on the tailpiece for the cylinder. You know, what's interesting is I don't see Medico listed here at all. For this tailpiece. So if you're using key and lever Medico cylinders, yeah, I don't see a tailpiece for that at all. So be mindful. Do that research before you just start ordering locks. You could order a case of locks to find out your cylinders will never fit. Not without extreme, you know, going to extreme lengths to make it fit. Same sort of concept with interchangeable core on this last page, where we do see Medico. So if you're running a Medico system, it has to be interchangeable core to work in this Marks lock. Not that, you know, if a Medico tailpiece or cylinder was compatible with these tailpieces, it would be listed here. Same concept. IC core removal. These tailpieces need to communicate to the back of the cylinder, and the you know, back of the cylinder with this, what I had called earlier the tuning fork. Not all platforms take that. You know, the F1903 F19, that's certainly going to be for Schlage. That has a very different sort of linkage between the back of the cylinder and the internal lock components that will ultimately retract the retracting hub. These spacers are possibly needed if you're installing 6-pin cylinders into a 7-pin prep. Security discs are nice because they go back, they will fit down into the back of the lock, and the purpose of that is it will block, the security disc will block the insertion of a probe down into the broaching of the keyway in the cylinder plug to get back down and in there and do some, sort of, conduct, official shenanigans. So that's what that security disc is for, to block probing through the keyway. So I would recommend that you study that to be sure you're in the clear. Troubleshooting, I've actually never seen a troubleshooting section of installation instructions, and that's really great. I won't read all of those, but if you're having trouble, you might look at the troubleshooting section immediately. That's where I say always pull on that lock. Make sure it's absolutely seated properly, the levers that is. You don't want to think that it's on and then drive a half an hour away in Friday traffic to get a call from the client that the handle came off in their hand. Unable to assemble the outside lever, that's pretty typical. When you're just having trouble getting it back on, the parts aren't fitting together. That's where taking a study of the lock helps. And they also refer to that figure number for further information. Outside lever removable without, I guess I am reading these, outside lever removable without using key. That could be that the cylinder is timed incorrectly. And without going into it too deeply, if you have a classroom function, which will be an S function, that needs to be timed. The parts here need to be in the proper timing for it to work correctly. Actually, I was explaining something different. If you cannot set the function of a classroom correctly with your key, removing it, modifying the lock position, and then removing the key, then it's timed incorrectly. What they're saying here is the outside lever can be removed without using a key. That's also a timing issue because you'll recall that I said that the tailpiece, when it's horizontal like this, it blocks the lever catch from being depressed because it's hitting the shoulder or the end of the tailpiece. Well, if you accidentally installed the tailpiece in this orientation, you would always be able to pull that lever catch down. Your lock would work with the key, but you would not have security over that exterior lever. So the problem is, in a key and knob lock, in a key and knob lock, you'll notice that this tailpiece is vertical. When you hold that cylinder, that's vertical. Well, imagine if you rotated it 90 degrees and now it's horizontal. Key and knob locks are horizontal. Well, in reality, so are key and lever locks, except that a key and knob lock, the cylinder is held vertical, but in a key and lever lock, you rotate that cylinder so it lays on its side. The tailpiece has to always be horizontal when it enters the lock. So if you installed the tailpiece with the cylinder in its proper vertical position, if you installed that horizontally, and then you turn the cylinder 90 degrees to get it in the lever, now that tailpiece is in the wrong position. It's going to reside vertically. You can always depress that. So that's what I would be looking for in that regard. Or you've got the wrong tailpiece, meaning I had mentioned earlier that these tailpieces are substantially wider. If you had a standard skinnier tailpiece, you might be able to pull that lever off without using the key. The latch won't retract is probably because the latch is not connected into the retractor, or your door alignment, or the preparation in your door is so out of tune with the template that the latch is binding. Keys bind in the lock. That's probably because the lock is too tight on the door, I would say. Lever catch not fully engaged. Yeah, if the lever is not thoroughly seated onto the stem of the lock's not going to operate fluidly. Again, check for proper tailpiece. If your tailpiece is too large or too wrong, it won't work real smoothly. Key cannot be removed from the cylinder. That's wrong tailpiece alignment again. you'll need to rotate your cylinder so that the cylinder is vertical or plumb with the Bible, this area up here. And if you can't get the key to that position, you'll never be able to pull it out. Lever retracts latch in one direction but not the other. Okay, yeah, so the S was the classroom function. Incorrect installation of cylinder, that goes back to a timing issue of needing to basically take that cylinder out, rotate the function, the part of the plus sign on the inside of the lock, you know, generally 90 degrees, and then testing it again, or maybe 180 degrees, depends on you know, what exactly the trouble is. But a nice little set of installation instructions that we've gone over here, and that does exhaust all the documentation available for this lock. So let's finish up this video on camera. Now, I personally don't have a lot of experience with Marks locks directly, but we do distribute their product. The width of that tailpiece is 0.322, so you can see that that's quite a wide tailpiece, and your tailpiece is going to need to be the proper width to get that to work. That Kaba or that Yale version, whatever the L9 was, 0.32. Yeah, so they're wider than the average tailpiece. So they're counting on you probably sticking a Schlage original cylinder into this, or the threaded cap style Kaba key and knob cylinders will take that, should take that tailpiece as well. Seems like a nice quality lock. It's obviously a lock that there are definitely people in the world that like Marks locks and they prefer them, and I have no argument in opposition to that at all. I have called the factory before. They have been, I actually called them to find out what G3 meant, even though it was quite clear in front of me. Very, very easy to get a hold of, very expert. The gal that I spoke to, gal, guy, doesn't really matter, that I spoke to did need to refer to the document, and I thought to myself, yeah, I wouldn't remember 100 extensions either, and as we went through that product catalog, I was thinking that. Why that person didn't know that off the top of their head? Sure, because there's 40 different ways to order a single lock. Well, there's more than that, to be sure. And what I appreciated was it took, you know, all but 10 seconds for that question to be answered. You know, let's face it, that's what you need. You need technical support to help you understand what needs to happen. I did not have to call them for any other aspect of this lock, and that's a testament to the engineering of the lock, in my opinion. While I understand locks better than the average person, you know, doesn't mean I am clairvoyant when it comes to how locks work. So what I'm trying to say is if it was relatively easy for me, I believe it will be relatively easy for you and other people to use the locks to get them installed. Now, that link below this video, if you recall me making a reference to it, to the manufacturer's page, that will allow you to see all the Marks locks that we have. The product catalog is there, and the link to their website. An interesting thing about Marks, and if you're in the Northeast, or certainly an urban area, otherwise, they have a lock. If you go to their website and click on products and then go to woven wire gate locks, they have a couple of, they have a sliding and a swinging version, woven wire, think perforated metal. Let's say you have a gate structure and it has woven wire or perforated metal. Well, they make a lock that will work in that sort of swinging gate or sliding gate application, and I did a video recently on the sliding version, and it's just a real simple sort of lock. I'm not aware of anyone else who makes it, so that's an interesting variant of lock that Marks has. Again, I wouldn't dissuade you from considering them whatsoever. They had good technical support. The lock seemed perfectly well, went back together the way I expected it to. Their website is good. What else can I say? There is, in conclusion, my final words of being this is the Marks Survivor Series 195 and an AB function. Satin chrome, and we know that's less cylinder, or any other Marks USA product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you.